Today I'm going to show you how you can make your subjects float. All you need for a fun levitation effect like this is a tripod and something that can be used to raise your subject off the ground, like a step ladder, stool, or other suitable perch. If you like, you could also try out a few props like our helium balloons here. We begin by setting up our camera on the tripod, and then we position the subject up on their perch and experiment with a few different poses. Next, we capture any other parts of the body we might need to complete the effect. Here, for example, Holly is stood up on her left leg for the main shot, so we can grab an extra shot of her dangling left leg to use later on. Once we've got what we need of the subject, the next step is to remove both them and their perch from the frame and capture the empty scene. The trick is to keep everything consistent across our whole set of images. So as well as keeping the camera steady, make sure things like lighting, exposure, and the focus point stay the same throughout. With something like this, once you've got the technique down, it's all about the posing. We need the pose to look believable, as if the subject really is floating. We also need to make sure the point of contact between the body and the perch isn't a giveaway, so pay attention to the way the clothes look and how the shadows fall. With all of our shots in the bag, the next step is to bring everything together in Photoshop. So here we are in Adobe Bridge, and I've edited my pictures down and chosen a few that I'm going to use for the effect. And I'm actually going to show you two different approaches here to the editing side of this. The first is to simply remove the stool here using a shot of the empty scene, and we could perhaps just add in a little bit of the clothes from this shot to come up with a finished effect like this. So that's the easy way to do it. There's a slightly more complicated method, which is to actually move the person to a different portion of the frame like this. You can see this is the main starting image I'm using here, and again I've got a shot of the empty scene and also a shot of the other leg that we can comp in, but this time rather than just get rid of the perch, we're actually going to move the subject to a different portion of the frame, so it's slightly more involved, but depending on your set of images you could take either approach. So let's get started. I'll begin by explaining the effect using these three images here. So I'm going to highlight all of them here in Bridge. I can hold Command or Control and click on them to select all three, and I'll right click over them and choose Open in Camera Raw. Now I'll start by editing this image here, so we can just go in and adjust the basic sliders here in the same way as we would with any image. Let's perhaps try knocking down the highlights a touch. We could grab the graduated filter tool and try dragging down from the sky there. Notice I've loaded it with negative exposure just to bring back a bit more detail in the sky. And as I say, this is all just about improving the tones and the detail just as you would with any image. And then once you're happy with that, the next step is to sync those changes across your entire set, because again, we want to keep everything consistent here. So I'm going to click on that thumbnail there in the film strip and then hit Command or Control and A. That's Command A on a Mac, Control A on a PC to select the other frames in the strip there. And then I'm going to go to the little flyout menu at the top here and choose Sync Settings. And I'm going to make sure all these settings are checked, and I also want to make sure local adjustments is checked, because that way we can sync that graduated filter adjustment we made as well. And then I'll hit OK to apply. And with those set of changes all synced up, I'm ready to open the set of images into Photoshop. So as long as all three are still highlighted, I can just click Open Images to bring them into Photoshop. And I'll start here by going to the image with my subject here, and I'll hit Command or Control and A to select the whole frame, and then Command or Control and C to copy. I can then go to the empty frame and hit Command or Control Shift and V to paste, and that will paste it in place. So I make sure it's pasting it in exactly the same place in this frame. And then we can go to our layers panel by going to Window, Layers, and notice we now have two different images, each occupying separate layers there in the layers panel. If I toggle that top layer off and on, you can see that the alignment has shifted slightly. So we might need to try and fix that. So we can just lower the opacity of that top layer, and if we zoom in a little closer to the details here, you can see the alignment slightly off. So we can grab the move tool and just try dragging the top layer so that it more closely matches the alignment below. And this may have been caused by the camera moving slightly between the two different frames here, but because it's only a slight difference, it's not too much of an issue, and we can fix it quite easily like that. And that's looking much better. So let's bring that back up and then zoom back out. Now we need to add a layer mask to this top layer here in order to hide parts of it. So we'll click the add layer mask icon here in the layers panel, grab the brush tool from the tools panel, and we'll set our foreground color to black. And while this mask thumbnail here is highlighted, we can paint over parts of the image with black to hide those parts of the layer. So let's just zoom in closer here to the stool, and I just need to start painting with black, and you can see immediately how that works. I might want to right click and just lower the hardness of my brush there just to make it a bit more subtle, just to keep the transitions a bit more gradual. So you can see how easy it is to blend our two images together in this way. I'm just using the left and right square bracket keys on my keyboard here to resize my brush tip, because obviously I want to go in with a smaller brush tip where I need to be a bit more precise along the edge of the body there. In fact, let's just zoom in a bit closer and we'll try just hiding that section of the stool there. So this is something you're going to want to spend a bit of time perfecting like this. And so this is what we're left with after a couple of minutes of painting there. You can see the effect is nearly complete, but we might be missing a small section of our subject here that we need to fill in, and we can use another frame to do that. So I could go to this frame here and then perhaps just select the same portion of the body there using the lasso tool over here in the tools panel. I can just make a rough selection of that area that we need to fill in, and then hit Command or Control and C to copy, go back to our main image, and then hit Command or Control and V to paste in, and then I can hit Command or Control and T to transform, and then we just need to line up this section with the rest of the body, and we might need to just try warping it slightly. So we could perhaps just lower the opacity and right click while transforming here and choose warp, and then we can just try shifting that layer around slightly just so that we can match the shape of the body in the original image. And then with that done, we can hit enter to apply, bring the opacity back up to 100, and then we just need to mask that top layer in the same way. So we can add a layer mask, grab the brush tool, and then we can paint to hide the areas that we don't want, like this. To finish off the effect. Of course, we just need to be a bit more precise around here. So I'm painting with black at the moment to hide parts of that layer, but I can always switch to white by hitting X on my keyboard, and then I can paint with white on the layer mask to reveal parts of that top layer, to bring back those clothes and just make everything look as perfect as possible. And if we just zoom out slightly and toggle that layer off and on, you can see how it adds to the overall image. So there we go, that's one approach to the editing side of this. Now let's move on to a slightly more complicated approach. If we go back into Bridge and open up our other set of images here, so we're going to be using this one, and this one. And again, we can edit them first in Camera Raw, and I've already done that, and I've synced the changes across the entire set, so I know that the tones are all going to be matching up quite nicely. So again, I'll open them all into Photoshop, and here's a quick tip: if you want to open RAW files straight into Photoshop while bypassing Camera Raw, you can just hold Shift and double click them. And with all of those files open, this time I'll go to my main image here, and I'm going to start by making a selection of Holly here. So I'll grab the quick selection brush from the tools panel over here, and I can just paint on her, and notice how the tool does a pretty good job of selecting the figure. There might be a few areas where the tool goes slightly wrong, where it seeks out the wrong edge there, but I just need to hold Alt and Paint to subtract those areas from the selection until it looks right. And I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to go to Refine Edge now. I can either use the button here or go to Select and Refine Edge. And then I can use the settings here to improve that selection edge and come up with something that's much more pleasing. So we'll begin by upping the radius, and this increases the area of refinement along the edge. We could also check Smart Radius there, and if we like, we can hit F to cycle through different view modes. I think I prefer the pink, and then we can just paint using the Refine Radius tool around areas if we need to try and pick up a bit more detail, such as these flying strands here on the scarf, and also around the hair here. So any areas that are quite problematic, like hair or any kind of furry areas, we can paint over them, and usually the tool will do a pretty good job of picking up those stray pixels. And with that done, we can choose Output to Layer Mask and hit OK. So now most of our image is hidden behind this mask here, and we can also edit the mask as before just by highlighting it, and then I can grab the brush tool, and it's looking a bit messy around the leg here. So I'm actually just going to get rid of that area because I'm going to use a leg from my other image, which is this leg here. So I just need to go in and again select that using the Quick Selection tool. And then again, I can refine the edge if I like, just by upping the radius and perhaps upping the smooth this time, just to come up with something a bit smoother and neater. And again, choose Output to Layer Mask and hit OK. And any messy patches like that area there, again, we can highlight the mask thumbnail and then just paint with black to tidy them up. And once that's nice and neat, we can add it into our other image. So we can grab the Move tool and we can click and drag up to the tab of our other image, and then down in and release to copy the leg over. And then we can just position it. We can hit Command or Control and T for transform. And if we just zoom out slightly, you can see we've got a box around that layer. We can just reshape it until the leg matches. Like that. So now I think we're ready to add our cutout into our main image. So let's highlight both of those layers there in the Layers panel, and I'm going to right click over them and choose Duplicate Layers. And then in the Destination Document settings here, I can choose another image. So I'll choose the clean image, which is this one here of the empty scene, and hit OK. And if we move across, you can see now how we've added our subject into this particular image here. And then all we need to do is move her across. So making sure both of those layers are still highlighted, I can just click and drag her to another part of the scene like that to make her look as if she's flying. And then of course we just need to add in our balloon. So again, we can go back to our other image, and I'm going to use this image again. So in fact, I'm just going to delete that layer mask and zoom back out and just grab the balloons this time from this particular image. So again, I'll use the Quick Selection tool to paint over those balloons. And then once I've got a decent selection of that area, I can again go to the Refine Edge command here and adjust the radius to fine tune things. Let's see if we can tidy up around here. Set the output and hit OK. And of course, copy the balloons over in the same way. And then we just need to position them. We can hit Command or Control and T again if we need to transform the layer until everything matches up nicely. And then all that's left to do really is to tidy up the image. There are a few messy lines around here caused by the edge of the frame here. So I can just highlight the masks and just paint to get rid of those little fringes along there. And we could also finish off with a tonal effect on top of everything. So I'm going to highlight the top layer, and then I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control Shift Alt and E to merge a copy of all of the layers. And I'm going to take this layer into the Camera Raw filter. So I'm just going to right click it before I do that and choose Convert to Smart Object to keep it non-destructive. And then I'll go to Filter, Camera Raw filter. And of course, you need Photoshop CC to use the Camera Raw filter, but if you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, you can always use adjustment layers or other tonal controls to finish off your image. And I'm going to perhaps up the clarity a touch. We'll up the shadows. We'll perhaps up the vibrance, make our image nice and punchy. Let's perhaps add a bit of contrast with curves like that. And we could perhaps add a tweak to the temperature there and drop down the highlights. And I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll hit OK to apply. And there we go, that's my finished flying portrait.